couple of days ago, I was interviewed by Alicia Renee Roberts. She Exudes Virtual Talks. She's a personal coach, blogger, and she also has a podcast. In the interview, we talk about how to have a successful marriage, how to prepare yourself for marriage, and how to find balance. This is part 2 of our discussion. So if you haven't watched part 1 yet, make sure that you go back and you watch that video as well.
When two become one, how do we maintain an identity? And this goes both for the male and the female. How do we maintain the identity and become one? Is there something, special that we need to do in order to make sure that we're always on track, that we're always in line with each other and not going off on various priorities?
Evaluate yourself in those roles, and if you feel that you're liking, you're gonna have to cut back and do something about it. And even talking to your husband about it. Even with now in my marriage, even though my husband and I've been married for a long time, every so often I do ask him, is it something else that you would like me to do more? Mm-hmm. Is it something that you are liking? Because from the fact that my goal is I want to please him, and I know how important it is as a marriage. And I think too that's a problem with a lot of marriages. Once they've been married for 5 years or more, they feel like that they don't have to please each other, that they don't have to pursue each other. And you got to pursue each other for eternity,
Right. And it does seem like, people are super excited when they're in that honeymoon phase and, they're talking and communicating well and being attentive to the other person's needs. And then things start to kind of fall off. And I'm not sure if that's because people just kind of get complacent and, they're just used to the routine. Maybe they start to take people for granted. I'm not sure. Is there anything else you can think of there?
Everything you said, I totally agree. And I think that's the problem. We get too comfortable with each other. We'll say, oh, that's just my husband. Or he'll say, oh, that's just my wife. But we should always try to make sure that we're pleasing each other. And that's one thing that God has been dealing with me about. And I'm so thankful for it. And I'm thankful that I would say that he have gave me insight in that area, because it's important. It's important as a wife to want to please your husband. And even I watch a lot of Christian women, especially the ones that's leaders or ministers or preachers, they feel like they're in charge, and God is not pleased with that. We are supposed to live our life by the Bible, and we're supposed to believe everything that's in there, even things that we feel that's not beneficial for us. We're still supposed to try to live by it.
Yeah. And it does say, that the man is the head. We always say as women, we are the neck because we support. We definitely support. He can't turn his head without us.
That's right.
But yeah, there is a hierarchy there. And so we should be doing some things to edify and make sure that, our husbands are pleased. And like we talked about earlier, vice versa, he should be reciprocating and giving us the love that we need as well. And I think all of that together is what can help the two to become one, because, eventually the things that he enjoys doing may become the things that she enjoys doing, and they end up doing those things together. Now, we're not saying that, they have to enjoy everything. I'm sure there's some TV shows or what have you that he didn't want to watch. He don't want to watch The Real Housewives and all of that. But, and that's totally healthy. That's totally fine for you to have, some things that you like to do, some friends outside of the marriage that you can go and have brunch or lunch with, and that you guys have friends and relationships together. That's definitely important as well.
And you know what, too? I wanted to say this, too, because I don't know if I said enough about that, two becoming one. And when you had just mentioned that, how that, you have to learn to maybe do stuff that he like and vice versa. And I can say that really had have helped me in so many ways by just being trying to be open-minded and trying to do stuff that he liked that I feel that I don't like. And later I found out that I love it. For instance, I'm not an outside person. And my husband, being that he helps on the inside of the house, he cooks and all this other stuff too. So I want to make sure that he's not doing more for me than I'm doing for him. So I want to help him too. So last summer, I decided to try to learn how to cut the grass. We have a huge front yard and a huge backyard. And the first day I did it felt kind of good. And what was so funny about it is because I got so caught up in just making sure that my rows are straight, because I like everything to be perfect. And it was soothing. And then not only that, I believe in working out. So I was getting my workout too. So I'm like, okay, this is benefiting me. This is benefiting him. And it was relaxing for me. And so it is good sometimes to do stuff with your spouse that you feel that you don't even like, because you may end up liking it.
That's a great point. And you're taking some load off of him as well by doing the lawn. And now, if it was for me, I'm not so much into some sports. So for example, football. And I know a lot of women do love football, but I just don't quite understand it. So one thing for me would be to stretch and at least go and attend, some of the games with the spouse, or, watch it on TV, even though I may not be totally paying attention, but it's the effort behind it. Would you say that's right?
Totally. That's what marriage is. It's a give and take, and you can't have all the wins all the time. We can't always have our way, even though we like to have our way, but some things, you just give in,
Yeah. And that leads me to another question. You mentioned that we like to have our way.
Yes.
Women, we like to have our way. We're very opinionated.
Yes.
And we just feel like we know it all.
Yes.
And I know I can't be the only one that thinks that.
I'm guilty. I'm guilty of it. And I can tell you this too. I have been praying to God about it a lot lately to help me, not to feel like I know it all, because I don't know it all.
Right.
And that's just not a good feeling for your partner when you do act like that, because even though if you may not say it, but they can feel it in your attitude,
Yeah.
So I have been trying to work on that one.
Now, I had learned, I had been given a tip from an older lady. She said, now, you may know it all, or you may know a lot of things. You're a smart person, but sometimes you have to let that man, let him feel like he's right, and let him lead that process. You could be thinking to yourself, oh my gosh, this is not going to end up well.
Sometimes it don't.
Right. It doesn't. But to keep the peace and to let him feel like he's owning something, or in that you respect his opinion, you just let him go with it. Now, I will say, if it's something, catastrophic, or, it's going to really have some repercussions, then, okay, you need to speak up and say something. But there are other times when you're like, oh, okay. Well, you said it's raining outside. Well, I don't see any rain, but okay, honey. All right. I'll bring my umbrella.
All I can say is, like, one thing that's good about having that kind of mindset is it's more calming for you. And you're not going to be as worried, because you have taught yourself not to worry about everything, and just stand by and allow him to do it.
Yeah. And, in the end, it usually always works out. There's more than one way to do things. And sometimes we do get a little rigid and, feel like, oh, well, my way is better. That's not true. So let people have some autonomy to make their own decisions sometimes, and just kind of fall back. So, that was some advice to myself, because I had to learn that kind of the hard way.
It does take time. It does take time, and it takes a lot of patience too.
especially when you are used to being the boss. I, was a single parent for so long and just kind of the head of my household. And so it was like, this is the way I do things. But when somebody else is coming in, then you have to respect their opinion as well.
Wow, I totally agree. And I do understand what you're saying, and that's why I think too, like if you've been single for a long time, of course you are used to taking care of everything because nothing will get done. And so it's one of those things to where I think that like if you were ready, you feel like, you're ready to get married, then I would even start praying to God to transform my mind about things like that, to help me to be able to allow him to take the lead. And I want to say this too, and I'm hoping I'm not jumping way ahead, but I think I kind of am, but
no problem.
That's why I would tell any single person too that before you accept someone's proposal, you want to make sure that there's someone that you can respect and you trust their judgment, because it's going to be so hard for you to stand back and allow him to lead the household. And, he's not good at making good decisions.
Right. That's very good advice because I've been there and I've heard women say it as well. Well, I can't let him lead because, he's irresponsible in this category. And it's like, okay, well, you chose him.
Yeah. Yes. It's hard and it's sad because like you said, you chose them. And so once you get into that relationship, you still can't make no excuses and say, well, I would, but we got to do what the word says.
Yeah. And there may be, some kindness that you can show to kind of nudge him in the right direction.
That's true.
So, if it's money, for example, and he's not great at handling the money, and you guys have decided that he would pay the bills and such, then okay, you can have some suggestion. Honey, I saw this great video, this class I would like for us to do, or whatever it is, to try to nudge him into the right direction. But ultimately, like you said, you chose that person.
Yes.
And now you have to accept your role in the marriage. So I love that, really take some time to think about whether or not you can trust and be led by this person. And that's so important because oftentimes I feel like we as women rush into relationships or marriages. I know from my experiences, I have dealt with a divorce, and I think when I thought back at it, I'm like, well, you know what? I did see some red flags that I should have not overlooked. And so if it wasn't because I just, wanted love so much and I wanted to be in this relationship so badly, maybe I would have taken more time and said, you know what? That's not going to work for me. I don't see how we can be happy and work together, because this is a lifelong partnership. And so it's not just for, the next 10, 20 years. It's a lifelong partnership.
And it's just like you said, it's like the red flags is there, but we can choose to ignore them. I think that once we get married, that we can change that person, but it doesn't work like that. That person's going to have to want to change their self. That's something that we just, just can't convince them to do.
Yes. All right. So we talked about balancing and how, that can often be difficult, but it is something that women need to work hard to learn the skill of balancing, because, raising a household and doing things outside the home can be difficult as well. And that could be a straining point on the marriage. What are some other keys to success that you would recommend?
I would recommend, okay, is this for the single lady or for the married lady?
For the married lady.
Always keep intimacy in your marriage alive. For some reason we feel like that once you've been married for a couple of years, then it's okay to not to be intimate with your husband as often, but that's one thing that you want to keep alive. It doesn't happen on itself. It's certain things that you have to do every so often in order to keep that fire burning, because it's very important. I think sometimes we underestimate what being intimate with your husband can do for your relationship and to keep it going, because it does keep that fire in your marriage and make it to where you want to come home. You know, you can't wait to be with that person. And I think sometimes as Christian women, we don't take that part as important because we don't think it's as important. And one thing I found out about with God, everything he created is good. And he created, you know, sex for marriage. And so, you know, it's good to come together with your spouse as often as you can. And I would say another thing too, respecting your spouse, respecting him, giving him that respect, and not talking about him negative to your family, you know. And I've seen a lot of Christian women, they do that kind of stuff. And another thing too is, like, when you start having difficulties in your marriage, you got to be careful about who you go to talk to, because some women will give you some bad advice, and they give you that advice too because they envy your relationship, or they may want what you have. So you have to be careful about that.
Yes. I would say if you're young in your marriage, it would be best to seek advice from someone who's got some years behind them, and definitely not a family member. You know, someone outside of family that you can trust and can be kind of like a mentor, because you need an independent person, but you don't want to smear your spouse's name. And you know, your family is always going to ride or die with you, regardless if you right or wrong. So yeah, and then you come back to them, you come back to your spouse, and then your family looks at you like, you know.
And it's one of those things too, it's too like once you do that, they're not going to respect him anymore. You know, even if you guys are made up, you know, and everything is okay, but they're not going to look at him the same. So you have to watch that. And then not only that, that goes back into treating him the way you want to be treated. I definitely wouldn't want my spouse to talk about me in a negative way to anyone else, whether they're male or female. It's good to take care of yourself, take care of your appearance. Practice self-care. All of that stuff is important, because in order for you to be a happy wife, you're going to have to be happy mentally. You know, you're going to want to exercise every so often, because one thing I can say that every time I exercise, it makes me feel good and it gives me more energy. You know, it makes me feel positive. And so I like to exercise just for that reason. And it also helped me to focus. And that's important. I mean, being having a good relationship and being a good wife is just so much more than what, you know, we think. It's not just one particular thing, but it's just like in every little area of your life, you want to have that balance. You're going to have to practice that self-care. You know, you're going to have to spend some time alone and continue to have your hobbies. Or if you don't have a hobby, you need to find some. You know, all of that is important, because when you're happy, then your behavior is going to be more positive towards him.
Right. Yeah. I like how you tied in working out to your mental health, and you know, that affects your happiness, your mood. You probably have more energy to attend to the family and still have some left over. Although we don't want to give the husband the leftovers. But you know, but I like what you said about, you know, just kind of keeping up yourself as well, because again, we're going back to how they met you. Now, sometimes you may end up looking better than you did in the beginning.
For real.
And I said, you know, it's great to enhance, not necessarily, you know, go the opposite way. But with you being married for 30 years, how do you keep your husband attracted to you? Are there any, I mean, that might be too much, but are there some things or some tips and tricks that you can give the women?
I will make it rated G. So. Okay. The same thing that you did when you guys were dating, you should continue to do when you get married. Same way when you were dating your spouse, you did little things to make him attracted to you, and you flirted with him. And so with me, I flirt with my husband, but I don't flirt with him with words. I just do it like physical, do little things, I may walk around the house with something, really cute on, and act like I'm not paying him an attention, guys like that,
Yeah.
And even like, go back to the keeping yourself up, staying clean, hygiene, things like that is very important. Try not to walk around the house looking a mess all, because
not all the time.
Because one thing I can say is like, even now, okay, I stopped working maybe like 3.5 years ago. So even though I stopped working, now I still try to make sure that every day that I groom myself, because it's not even so much just for him, but for myself, it keeps me positive. When I look in the mirror, and then my hair is combed, I have on something like a little decent, something attractive. It's going to make me feel pretty. And I think it's very important, if you're single or even married, just to keep up your appearance. And that helps your marriage. And one thing I can say too with my husband, I like about him, he does the same thing. And a lot of times I know like some women may have a husband to where he don't fix himself up and things like that. But make sure that you are doing it, because most of the time now, if they see you doing it, they're going to catch the hint. They're going to follow your lead, because it's like, one of the key things I learned in marriage is that we as women, we have so much more power over our husband's behavior than what we think about. And it have more to do, and God put that in us, but it's just that we just have to use it in a positive way. We don't need to be conniving or anything like that. But whatever it is that you want from your husband, if you give him that same behavior, he is going to give that back to you. It's just the way it is. And even in the Word of God, it talks about that too, how that, a sanctified wife, she's going to sanctify her husband, and she's going to do it through her behavior. So if you can convince your husband to get saved just by through your behavior, we can convince him to do other things through our behavior too.
All right, very true. Yeah, and I heard, being a little flirtatious as well. Yeah. Don't let that leave.
Don't turn it off.
Don't turn it off. Yes.
Yeah. And I want to say this right quick, and I'm gonna speed it up because I know we're running out of time. For the longest in my marriage, I would feel a little guilty, when I would be intimate with my spouse and I would just really enjoy it. So, I would feel guilty because I didn't think that was, something that a Christian woman should do, just enjoy her spouse like that. But then, going back to that scripture where it says that, how that when God created everything, he did create sex for marriage. So enjoy it, and try to keep it alive in your marriage. And I'm a witness that you can do it. You don't have to let that fire burn out.
That's important. Yeah, that's great to hear. Because I'm sure there's some women out there that, are wondering, as you age, how will things continue to go? But intimacy is not always just about sex as well. I mean, there's the little things, the flirting, the touching, the whispering, sweet little nothings in someone's ears. So yeah, it's good to hear that you can continue to do these things.
Whatever that's important to us as women, and if it's important to us, we can find a way to do it, and we can find a way to keep it alive. Whatever it is, And I think that one of the worst things you can do, like when you get married or even before you get married, you believe what everybody else say, when it says, well, girl, like once you've been married for a couple of years, you ain't gonna care about this and that, whatever. No, that's not true. It don't have to be like that. But if you don't do anything, it's going to be like that for you too.
Well, we've talked about several things that we can do to keep ourselves up as women and make sure that we are happy, our family and our spouse is happy in the relationship. Now, what advice would you give someone, particularly a woman who is experiencing maybe some hardships in her marriage? Is there anything that maybe that she could do to try to spice things up and keep the marriage happy, or get it back to where it used to be?
I do want to say this too, like in every marriage, in my marriage as well, you're going to go through those seasons. It's going to get hard and you're going to feel like giving up. And that's normal. I don't care who you marry. And even let's say if this your soulmate, even with your soulmate, you're going to have some issues because it's normal. Because for one thing, we are human and nobody is perfect. And that happens too, because from the fact that two people are trying to become one. And so every so often, you're going to bump heads, or one of you are going to make a mistake, and it could be something that's very hurtful. And I would say this is when that happens in your marriage, you do want to pray and just ask God for strength, and He will strengthen you. It's like one thing I learned about God. Whatever thing that's going on in our life and we are concerned about, He's concerned about too. And He wants us to have good marriages. He wants our marriages to work. And so what I've learned personally, like no matter what the situation is that's going on in my marriage and how difficult it seems, I try to wait. And I try to trust God and ask Him for direction, before I just step and do something I don't think is good, just to move fast. You want to make sure that you're making, the right decision about your marriage. And so I will wait on the Lord. And in the meantime, while I'm waiting on the Lord, I would try to make sure that I'm treating my husband the right way. And I know it's going to be hard, especially if the offense came from him. And in that type of situation, I learned to put my trust more in God, more than myself. And I also had to learn to not give up on my marriage because of the way that things look. Because sometimes, if we wait, that God will change things around. And so I would say the key too is waiting and praying about it, and then asking God what He needs you to do. And if He don't say anything, I think that means that is your decision.
Wow.
And you have to do what you think is best for you.
That's some really good advice. I love that. Pray, wait, and pray. So be patient and make sure that you are attentive and you are in a space where you can hear what God has for you as far as the next move. But then also, like you said, if you don't hear anything, you take that as it's your decision to make.
Yeah.
That's powerful. Thank you.
You're welcome. Your marriage is so hard. And it's one of those things where I can't tell you, well, you need to stay or you need to leave. That's something that you have to decide. You have to do what's best for you.
And either way, the decision is it's going to take some work.
It's going to take some work. Whether you stay or leave, it's going to take some work. And I can say this too. Another thing that I learned, and it's hard, but you're going to have to do a lot of forgiving. You have to forgive because when you hold on to that stuff, you become bitter, you become short patient. It's going to be hard for you guys to even communicate because you're going to be mad.
Yeah.
So, I had to learn to forgive.
I am just so thankful for the conversation that we've had so far. I am not currently married, as I talked earlier about having gone through divorce, but these, I felt like there were some good nuggets of wisdom that was shared and some good advice that a woman can use prior to marriage and then actually in the marriage as well. So thank you so much for just sharing with us, and I've hoped that people have been able to be inspired and they have taken some wisdom home as well.
Thank you for tuning in for part 2 of our conversation. If you like my message and you just want to support me by subscribing to my YouTube channel, the more subscribers I get, the more YouTube will recommend my content to other Christian women. I also do one-on-one consultation. If you want to schedule a free consultation with me, I will have the information in my description box below. Thank you for tuning in, and stay tuned in for the next upcoming video. Bye.